I had an interesting conversation with my best friend Reuben. I'm going to hop straight into this episode of how to separate your conversations and different modes so that you can make your conversations more high quality. But we came up with this idea called conversation segregation. Obviously, conversation is exchanging of ideas, and segregation is separation between different types of something. And so conversation segregation is taking the different types of modes of conversations that you have with the people around you, and it's defining them as distinct, and through that you separate borders. But I'll teach you guys what it is right now. Bear in mind, by the way, I need to come up with better names for the different modes of conversation, but I'll come up with some soon. Number 1, greetings and farewells. So greetings and farewells is your hellos, goodbyes. It's your introduction and outroduction to your conversations. And if you leave them out, the two people who are having the conversation, if you don't have the greetings and farewells, those two people are to feel much closer in relation. Like, obviously I don't say hello to my family members when I talk to them. I just hop straight into conversation because we're really close together. And so I assume if you want intimacy in your friendships, then considering getting rid of your greetings and farewells might actually promote the idea that you guys are closer friends. Skipping your greetings and your farewells implies familiarity. Number 2, catching up. It's when you ask your friend what you've been up to. How are you? What's up? And then they give you what's been on their mind, how they've been, what has happened recently, or just basically what they've been going through. Manda Panda, can you stop the rumbling? Thank you. You better not be touching my deodorant. Not anymore. She's cleaning our bathroom. It's pretty obvious what catching up is, but I believe if you're more deliberate about it, you could make your catching up more efficient by saying something like going in a structure, such as I was thinking this recently, I was feeling this recently, and I've been doing this differently recently. Basically, you can further separate ideas to make a schematic to where you can converse at a higher quality and make the very introduction to your conversation at a minimum, so you can make more time for the actual meat of your conversations. Number 3 is small talk. Now, small talk is obviously when you ramble on about ideas that aren't necessarily beneficial for you long term or even in the short term. I guess a good way to put it is there's no realistic benefit outside of the conversation. These should be avoided for most situations if you can help it. And the reason why I say that is if you are lessening the amount of random conversations you have about things that don't give you or that other person much value, then you can skip straight on to the higher quality stuff, which brings me to number 4, analytical conversations. Analytical conversations, this is when you have the energetic conversations with your friends that allow you to talk about things that you love, and you connect ideas from different fields and different experiences and different knowledge that you've never heard about before. This is where the most learning happens. And I believe friendships is a really fun and good way to become smarter, because other people are able to summarize what they've learned in a conversation that you could pick up in one grasp. But analytical conversations should go as you might assume, but there's a couple things you might want to keep in mind to keep your analytical conversations in pristine condition. You have to be conscious of your filler words, like, because, and they should all be avoided as much as possible. And a couple of these reasons include unprofessionality, inefficiency for having the higher quality conversations. It allows you to become a better speaker. And a couple of these words could be replaced with more definitive words to show more intellectuality, I guess. Instead of saying like, you could use something as you could write such as. You could do many things that work around the word like, because we use the word like a lot. My filler word has recently been I think. I keep saying I think because it allows myself to step away from being so certain about an idea and having such a fixed mindset. And it just shows something that I've been using in my head, that this is something abstract, very vague, that I've just come about. So I don't know for a fact that if it's true or not. I think there's better words to be used. I could use I think. I could use I feel like. I could use a lot of different things. I should use a variety of synonyms within the same conversation so that it doesn't get so repetitive, but two, obviously, it upgrades the quality and flavor of your conversation. So aside from fillers, there's this other thing that lowers the quality of your conversations, and it's called loops. Loops obviously means when you cycle through the same thing over and over and over, and sometimes when you're trying to explain your thoughts or ideas, you keep going through the same ideas over and over and over with little bits and bobs added and subtracted. And as I've said in this video, your content consumption is much better with books because you're getting rid of the same YouTube video with little different bits and bobs added and subtracted. It results in higher quality if you're able to get all the information in one place. So it's a lot better in your conversations to get rid of the loops of going around the same idea a million times. It's much better to slow down and just think your way through each step of what you're talking about. The third thing within analytical conversations to make it more higher quality is your distractions. When you get a text and you're in the middle of a conversation, a deep conversation, you are disrupted from your secondary mental landscape, and you are put into the physical world and you have to sidetrack for a second. That's all right. Some things are inevitable, such as getting a text from your mother, or maybe a dog walks up. That you can't control that. But what you can control is being able to hop right back into your conversation without having too much loss of train of thought, or as I like to call it, brain train. And some ideas: when you have two people talking, one handles the issue, aka replies to the text, or takes care of the dog, or you both decide to ignore it, and the other person kind of like holds onto the balloon and doesn't let it go. They think about the ramp right back onto the conversation, and if the person's very confident that he can lead the conversation back to where you stopped, then he could continue independently thinking about his ideas on the subjects, maybe some points to bring up on the ideas. So one person deals with the distraction, one person keeps the thought bubble so you can return right back into it. And another item which is very similar to distractions is squirrels. Okay, I came up with that name because in the movie Up, one of the dogs sees a squirrel and everyone goes, "Squirrels! I hate squirrels." And it's just a 1 second, very temporary distraction. And sometimes when you're having a conversation, the same thing will happen. You'll look up and see an airplane go by and you're like, "Oh, look, an airplane," and you go back into your conversation. Very quick. It's not like a full-on, you have to call your mom real quick and step outside the conversation. It's just a very quick little something to keep your attention away from what you're talking about for just a split second. These are also okay unless you're able to keep them from happening. But sometimes I feel that when I do have the little squirrels and I get distracted and say, "Oh, that tree looks pretty cool," it kind of adds more personality to our conversation, and it allows us to be ourselves easier, and it allows me to feel more connected to the other person. The fifth item within analytical conversations is also kind of a distraction, but it's more of an internal mental distraction, and it's called third party syndrome. You're the first party, your friend's the second party, but then there's this tertiary party that's getting in the way of your conversation. And that could be another group of people walking by while you're trying to talk analytically with your friend, and you become very conscious about it. Or it could be the fact that you have a microphone recording your input, and once again you become conscious of it, so you kind of suppress yourself and become awkward in some sort of way, and your analytical conversation is suppressed because of it. It's being in the same vicinity as someone who is able to interpret the information or a piece of technology that has the potential to transport that information to someone else who is able to interpret it. So I just suggest to avoid it at all costs if you can. But if you can't, you could have a good metacognition conversation about the benefits and downsides of some third party ruining your conversation. What happened in my conversation with Reuben is we were walking down the street, and there was this other group of two people walking down the street next to us, but they were right behind us. We just couldn't get ourselves to start the conversation, and they followed us for a while down the road. But first of all, we became conscious of their presence, and then we became conscious of why we're conscious of their presence and why that bothered us. But we were very self-introspective. It was kind of ironic because we had an analytical conversation about why we couldn't have an analytical conversation on why the third-party syndrome had occurred. And we came up with it right there on the spot. I just love how paradoxical that is. That's just kind of cool. The sixth and final thing within analytical conversations that we figured out is called tree branches. So when you're talking about idea, there's kind of like a root that's the main core idea. It's not, it's a very general topic. But then as you go up the tree, the branches spread out and you have more and more sticks. But what's a weird factor is we understood that eventually we'll hit a main topic that leads out into small topics, but one of the small topics becomes its own tree. And that own tree has its own unique branches of information inside of it. Sometimes you get so down deep in the brushes, it becomes unnecessary to the topic as a whole, and the quality of conversation isn't going to be too great because you're kind of like kneeling down and looking through some sand to find a piece of mirror when if you step back you could probably see its reflection. So I hypothesize that it may be a little bit more efficient to step away from super niche topics unless you both are very interested about it and it could help you in applicants some way now or in the future. But where I was leading with the tree branches is that when you have the main topic and it goes to another branch, sometimes you get so engulfed in that one branch that you forget about the main topic you're talking about, and therefore you kind of go down one branch which turns into its own tree, which goes down its own branch, and you kind of go down a rabbit hole, and then you have to kind of wiggle your way backwards. And me and Reuben had the conversation, and for 30 minutes straight we went down a rabbit hole of random ideas. We're like, oh, I want to talk about this, and we talked about that for a little bit, and then we said another keyword that brought us down another rabbit hole, and then we started and we're like, what were we talking about at the beginning? I kind of wanted to finish that conversation, but we didn't really get to it because we got way down deep into the branches. So another thing we quantified about conversations is there's two emotional feelings about analytical conversations. The first one is when we're thinking both out loud and we're transacting ideas at an equal rate, meaning I'm giving information, he's receiving it, but he's also giving his input and I'm receiving it. And it gives this feel of like perfect harmony and balance, and it's the best analytical conversation. Other than the equal transaction of ideas, there's the kind of conversations where you're telling them about something you've learned, but they are just receiving it. They have no more input to add. And this gives you the feel that you're fully giving them information and you're conscious of that. And the other person is, they know they're fully receiving new information and they have nothing to add, and they're conscious of that. And because of that, it portrays some weird feeling of, it's not negative, it's really slightly less than neutral, I guess. But the feel of the conversation is quite different from the equal transaction of ideas. And I made this note that I'm pretty sure there's more types of conversations that give different feels, like, advice or intimacy or compassion or sympathy, empathy, and I wrote emotionally driven, which also has its own subset of different feelings. And then obviously there's many more factors I didn't cover. Those are all just different factors that may play into the different feels of a conversation. I really hope you're getting a lot of quality from this sort of video. I feel more natural talking about it than I do the other topics because this has been come up with in a 2-hour conversation of actively consuming new knowledge, but also playing with the knowledge by adding my own ideas. And I just learn so much better when I'm actively having a conversation about it and then taking notes and reflecting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.